Tonight we have Aubrey Moncrief. Aubrey has an extremely interesting story to tell about what he thought when he joined up and then what actually happened to him after that. And probably all of us can identify with what we thought when we joined up and then what happened to us later on. So I'm going to ask you to, and I will do the same, mute your microphones if you would, and then we're going to be able to hear from Aubrey. Aubrey, if you would tell us what you have to say.
Thank you very much, Jim. My name is Aubrey Moncrief. Probably up until maybe 2 or 3 years ago, I wouldn't be able to do this. Thanks to Jim and Billy and some others in the AMVETS group, I've been able to actually talk about some things. So bear with me. I am a Vietnam veteran. I served in Vietnam from 3 August 1968 until 24 September 1969. Early January of 1968, the Tet Offensive occurred. And that was a combined effort of the North Vietnamese to simultaneously hit several posts, several bases, and cause havoc throughout the country. The way that I got into the military and how I got to Vietnam is probably part of my story. I graduated from high school in 1966 and entered college and did a lot more in college than study. I had a .04 grade point average, and I promptly lost my deferment. And at that time, it was during the draft, and I thought, oh boy, I'm going to be in Vietnam for sure. And so I decided to enlist in the Air Force. I had a skill. I was an operating room technician. I had done that when I was a senior in high school through some of my first year of college, and it was like an on-the-job training. When I got to college, I also worked part-time as an operating room technician. So I felt like that I at least had a skill that the Air Force could use, and that I maybe wouldn't land up in Vietnam. They put me on in some base somewhere in the United States. I was wrong, really wrong. I ended up going to basic training at Lackland Air Force Base in San Antonio, Texas. And in June of 1968, I was given credit for my operating room technology experience. And it was given that MOS. I then, since a lot of other recruits were going through their schools to be able to be trained in different things, they really didn't have anything for me to do, I thought. So I was sent to several training schools. I went to jump school. I went to survival training school. I went to weapons school with the Green Berets, which should have been my first idea that, they've got something planned for me. At any rate, I finished all those things and was sent to my duty station was Castle Air Force Base, California. It was a SAC base. They flew B-52s and KC-135s, refueling planes. And so I thought I was in pretty good shape. I was then promptly put on what they called, they had different names for these teams all over the United States. And we named our team a Broken Arrow team. And it was basically to chase down things. We were top secret. There was a flight surgeon, and we were put on call all the time. And maybe once a month we'd be called up, and it'd usually be early hours of the morning. We go to the flight line and have our flight suits on, and we climb aboard a B-52, which is web seating, and there's only room for about 5 people in a B-52, all the electronics and the bombs and everything else. And non-pressurized cabin. Got in there, and one morning it took off, August 3rd, 1968. And when we got up to altitude, the co-pilot came through and handed out sealed orders, Republic of South Vietnam. I can see it to this day. And I thought, well, I'll say goodbye, because this is probably the last time I'll ever be back here. Flew 14 hours, refueled over the Pacific with a KC-135, and that was a real treat. You know, we were standing up there up front and watching them lower the beam and refuel the plane. Landed in Da Nang, and was loaded on trucks and went north to Quang Tri. That was my base. I was attached by orders to the 22nd Medical Group, which was an Army surgical group. And then I was attached to the 5th Special Forces Group, Green Berets. My job entailed being a team member of a 5-man team, Green Berets, and I was their medical personnel. I was a combat medic. And then when I was not out on patrols or doing the missions that we were supposed to do, then I was in the operating room working as an OR technician with the 22nd Medical Group. So 24/7, I was busy. I was working. My life changed overnight. The whole expectation of even the possibility of going to Vietnam, I was in college in 1968. 1967 and 1968, there was a huge amount of people that were against the Vietnam War. So here I was right in the middle of something that a lot of people around me did not like. In fact, several of my friends had gone to Canada and were conscious objectors and decided they were not going to play this game, and they left. I couldn't do that. I'm an American, and I served my country. And I took an oath. And so I was there for better or for worse. Sometimes I thought it was a lot worse than better. The whole mentality, I think, when I first hit the ground was, I'm with the Green Berets. I've been trained in weapons. I've been trained to kill people. And here I was going to be going out and I was going to be killing babies and people. The Green Berets are not, they are not a search and destroy unit. And I think a lot of people have a different idea about that. And they are to maintain relationships with the locals and try to, most of our missions were either trying to extract someone that maybe had gotten behind the enemy lines and we had to get them out, or using contacts and going into villages and befriending them and trying to do things to help them. I don't know how many little kids that I patched up as a combat medic. I did a lot of that, and they were very, very appreciative. The Viet Cong had a way of really telling people that they didn't want you around, and they would go to a village, they would take the youngest and the oldest, and they would behead them, and they would put their heads on a stake outside the front of the village and the back of the village. And so when you walk up to a village and you saw a head on a stake, you knew that the Viet Cong were there. You had to be very careful. You didn't really, sometimes you really didn't know who the enemy was. I had many times. I've had a lot of close calls. I don't know why I'm here. Um, it, um, it it's one of those things that just by the grace of God, that he had something else for me to do, and I've been lucky enough to have that. The Tet Offensive, like I was saying before, started in 1968 in January, and it was a combined effort of the North Vietnamese Army, the NVA, and the Viet Cong, and the Chinese, a lot of people, that they were all at the same time hitting a lot of different bases. Pleiku, Quan Tri got hit, a lot of other, a bunch of them. And when I ended up there in August, they were very entrenched, and they kept coming. It was one of the things that Westmoreland kept saying. The numbers were a certain number. Well, we saw a lot more than that coming at us. We knew that there were a lot more. The casualties and the numbers were all changed. There was just a lot of unknowns, and you don't want to say lies, but a lot of misinformation, and you really didn't know who to believe, and you were in kind of a really tight space. You were between the middle of nowhere and a lot of people that wanted to see you dead. So when my morning, I'll just give you an idea of how my day would go. I get up in the morning, and if I was to be, they would let you know a few days in advance, what days you were going to be actually going out on a mission. We would have a meeting, and it was usually early hours of the morning that we'd get together. It's usually 4 or 5 a.m. And then we'd be meeting a chopper to go out and drop us in an area that we were supposed to go, and then we knew how far we had to go and what we had to do and what villages we were going to try to contact. We had a lot of we had an interpreter with us. I mean, one of our Green Berets was very, very well versed in Vietnamese. I picked up a few words, but most of them I can't repeat. But at most of the time, we were basically going out to try to make more contacts, see if people needed anything, try to get things arranged for them, and just do the things that we do. I had sent Jim some photographs, and one of them is of a village, a typical village, and it's just a beautiful village. The guy that took these pictures, I need to preface this, is that he was a supply sergeant for the Marines, and he had a new camera that he got in Japan, and he wanted to take pictures. And he had a roll of black and white, and he had a roll of the color. So that's why you're going to see some black and whites and some color. The one in the center at the top of the screen is a village, and I can't really quite remember which village this was. This one was so beautiful because it had this big cedar tree just growing right out of the middle of it. And there was, of course, the shack or the hut on the right on stilts, and of course the family dog in the middle of the yard. This particular village, I do remember, had a little girl that had been hit with friendly fire. It was her friendly fire was the North Vietnamese. And part of her face was gone, and we fixed her up and got her all done up really well. and they offered to have us back for dinner. And of course, you can't not go back for dinner, but the family dog was never to be seen again, and we had dinner that night. So that picture was kind of an interesting one. The picture to the right of that one, the color one, is one of our boarding a helicopter with our team. To the far left is we were on a hill, and you can't really see them, but it is completely dotted with enemy soldiers in that valley. And I don't know if you can, it's really hard to see, but they're little tiny specks amongst the trees, and they're just all over the place. And of course, we retreated and went the other direction. The other page down below, the one you're seeing with the helicopter, that is me in that photo. That's the only photo I have of myself in Vietnam. And then Quan Tri is the huts with the Jeep in front. And then the other soldier was a friend of ours that we used to call him Swayback. And we always thought he looked quite interesting with his, he was always on duty, and so we took a picture of him. And down the far left is the, it looks like, it's the traffic light in Da Nang. And we happened to go to Da Nang one weekend, and this photograph was taken just before that vehicle took it out. It was, I didn't have a post picture, but the pre-picture was the only one I had, and I thought that was really interesting. That was a traffic signal in Da Nang. That's about all I have as far as the photographs are concerned. I just thought to kind of give you a little bit of an idea of what my day was like, and then days when I was off and I didn't go out on a mission, then I was in the operating room usually 10, 12, 14 hours, assisting and trying to get, acting like a surgeon and fixing people up and doing things. I have a lot of stories. I mean, hundreds, and some of them I can tell pretty easily, and some of them have a little bit more humorous side than others. The one that's in the book, I think, is the one that 10 years after I come out of the service, I was working as a nurse in a cardiac care unit, and I had gone back to school and become a nurse. And this guy was a rep for one of the drug companies, and he comes in, and he just looked very familiar to me. And he sat down beside me, and we were talking, and I just asked him, I said, "Have you been in Vietnam?" And he said, "Yeah, how you know?" And I said, "Well, I patched you up." I said, "You were hit with a sniper through your shoulder, and it came out through your lung, and I put bandages over your lung so it wouldn't collapse." And I said, "I took care of you and got you out of there." And I mean, he broke up, I broke up, and it was him. I never really kept in touch with him. That was up in Michigan, and then I moved to Missouri, and so I never really followed up with him. But that's the only person that I have ever met that I've actually known in Vietnam and took care of. And that's just kind of one of those stories that's going to follow me all my life. A couple other ones was I had a helicopter. I didn't like helicopters very much. They got shot down a lot. And I think, Chip, you're going to be talking about this, I guess. I may have even been on a helicopter with you. I don't even know. But we were on a mission, and we got on our helicopter, and we took off, and we went a few clicks out, and we got shot down. And it was, just like a tail rotor type thing. And the pilots all in Vietnam were just excellent. I mean, he landed that thing like, it was nothing to do. I mean, it jolted us around. We all jumped off, hid the pilot and the co-pilot off in the brush, and then we waited for the Viet Cong to come up and try to find us, and we took them all out, and then had our radio man call in another helicopter. The other helicopter comes in, gets in, we go a few more clicks further back, and it gets shot down. Same thing. And so here we've got not one pilot, but we got two pilots and two co-pilots. And so we hide them in the brush, and we take out all the Viet Cong that come to get us. And one of the pilots says, so you want me to call in another one? And I said, no, we're walking back. So we walked back. And it was a pretty good hike, but it took us most of the day. But we got back, we were all in one piece, and minus two helicopters. So that's my helicopter story. My operating room story is a little sadder. We had been working many hours, and there was one spot I usually stood on one side of the table. We had three operating tables, and we came under mortar fire. And I was actually standing on the opposite side of where I usually stood, and we had one nurse that was standing opposite me, and she got shrapnel at the base of her skull, and it killed her instantly. That was right where I usually stood. For some reason, I wasn't there. I was on the other side. And so, God bless her soul, she took one for me. And then the photographer, the supply sergeant, Michael Sawyer, was the one that took all those photos. And what he'd done is he gave me, when I left Vietnam in September of 1968, he handed me the two rolls of film. One was black and white, and one was color. There was a lot of other shots on those rolls. And I don't know where all of them went, but those are the ones I kept. And I was able to, when I came back, I had those in my sack, and that's about all I had of Vietnam. And a few weeks after we had pulled out, or I had been pulled out, our unit was moved to Pleiku, and Sawyer was with them as the Marines were also moved, and the whole unit was overrun, and everyone was killed along with Michael Sawyer. So I have a little bit of his photography to help him live on a little bit. I'll take any questions.
Aubrey, when we interviewed you, you talked a little bit about the fact that you were in Vietnam for, how long was it?
A year, 1 month, 19 days.
Okay. And nobody in your family or friends or anybody knew that you were there.
Correct. Correct.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Okay, being on a top secret team like that, and during the Tet Offensive, everyone had DOD top secret clearance, and we were not allowed to let anybody know where we were in Vietnam. When we took off, in our orders, it said that it had to go by the top secret clearance, that anything that we wrote, anything that we wanted to send to our families was left open, and then it was redacted, or it was usually thrown in file 13. And if you were able to get out a letter, then it was sent back to your duty station and then postmarked from there. So you could talk about weather. You could talk about, oh, I didn't sleep good last night or anything like that, or, just the usual things of like, I missed you and things like that. And so none of my family knew that I'd been in Vietnam. And even my wife, for 8 years after we were married, I came back out of the service in 70. In 71, we were married. And for 8 years, she didn't know that I'd ever been in Vietnam. I was given a code name when I came out of the service. Well, when I came back from Vietnam, we were debriefed. We were sent to Goose Bay, Labrador for 2 weeks. That was our R&R. And we went up there, and the whole time we were being debriefed. And we were given code names. And one morning, it was about 8 years after I had separated from the service, I got a phone call in the middle of the night that all they had to do was just say my code name, and my code name was Sweet Pea. And the gates opened and I went into a deep depression. I cried every day. I couldn't get out of bed. My wife, 8 years, and thought, what am I going to do with this guy? I married him and he's falling apart. And she was a nurse and she stuck with me and got me through it. And then I went back to work as an OR tech, and then went to nursing school, went to anesthesia school, and then here I am. So yeah, the whole situation of top secrecy and not letting your family know was mainly, I guess, protection for the guys, knowing that during the Tet Offensive that they were sending extra crews in, because of the Tet Offensive. And they had reasons. I don't really know why, but that's the way it was.
Does anybody else have any questions?
I got a question.
Okay.
Aubrey, you made reference to the Tet Offensive, and probably a generalization that all of us have heard about the U.S. winning militarily, but the North winning in terms of propaganda. And I couldn't help but think of that when you were telling me about the pall that was cast over the whole place when you got there. Your thoughts on that?
We were not winning. I think there's kind of some happy medium between those two, because I think, the North, they did use a lot of propaganda to their advantage, but it was surprise attacks. There were a lot of them. They were organized, and where the American military higher ups were saying that we were winning, we were holding our own, but we had to have a lot of extra support, and that's where I came in. For a lot of us coming in afterwards with the support to eventually win back that. But the Tet Offensive was very effective, and we couldn't let them know that.
Anybody else got any other questions or comments?
Where did you live? You said you went to Missouri. Where did you go in Missouri?
I was, I'm from Missouri originally. I grew up in Canton, Missouri, up in the northeast corner of the state. Went to college at William Jewell College outside Kansas City at Liberty. And then when I went to anesthesia school, we moved to Michigan. When I got out of the service, moved to Michigan. I was trying to get in medical school at Michigan State. I'm a Michigan State grad. And then nursing school in Michigan, and then went back to Missouri to anesthesia school in Springfield, down the southern part of the state. And then up until 3 years ago, we lived in Lake of the Ozarks in Missouri for a period of about 15 years.
Oh, I taught at St. Louis University for 20 years.
St. Louis U, yeah.
Yeah, the Billikens.
Often. Yeah, I've worked at several hospitals in St. Louis at the Christian hospital that's
Right.
near St. Louis U. A lot of St. Louis U students would rotate through the hospital.
Yeah, a lot of you guys are still on mute.
Billy,
I
what
think-
about you?
My time was split into half of the time was on a fire base, same fire base, and fire direction center as a fire direction officer. And the other 6 months was I was with an infantry company as a forward observer. We were on search and destroy missions. Sometimes I wondered if we were really on search and avoid missions. And there was good reasons to use that strategy of search and avoid, because in my handset, I had the U.S. Air Force, several artillery bases, jet fighters, Cobra gunships, and I could rain hell on the enemy. So why try to charge the enemy when I had all that firepower?
Exactly.
And so during the Cambodian invasion, which I was on, back to the time we got back in the Tay Ninh province, our battalion of 300 lost 370 killed and wounded. And we were one company out of 3 in that battalion. We lost 1 killed and 7 wounded. Now, I was pretty damn good as an FO, and I didn't hesitate a minute to call in all the firepower that we had in our resources. And so I think with a little luck and a strategy of not trying to be overly aggressive so as to not get our guys killed, we survived, and we found some enemy caches, and I guess we killed some enemy. We never went up to try and count bodies because that could get you killed. We just backed up, and I called more ordnance in on it, and most of us came back alive. So here we are 50 years later. Why are we still talking about this? I guess some of us are trying to get it off our chests. Public needs to know. I don't know that it's been adequately covered from the veteran standpoint. And so I thank Jim Stovall and Ed Caudle for bringing the focus on it that we've been able to do.
Anybody else got any questions or comments that you'd like to make?
I'm Brad Shore. This is my father, Ed. He was there at the same time.
Okay.
Hi, Ed.
Hey, all I want to say is I really enjoyed that, and I relate to a lot of the things that he was saying. But personally, I appreciate what you're doing in keeping this alive and active. And I'm proud to be here today, first time to enjoy this. And I saw Chipper Edwards on there earlier. I thought that was him. We went to high school together a long time ago, Maryville High School. Hi, Chipper.
But don't forget, guys, we're putting this up on, or Jim's putting it up, and the library are putting it up online. So the interviews that we have with all you guys are going to be available if they aren't already.
Yeah,
The people that, Ed or Jim, the people that couldn't check in or others that are interested in our project, how can we forward them the results of this session tonight?
well, it'll be on YouTube before very long. So I'll send out
Okay.
a link to everybody. And as soon as I get my rear in gear and get some editing done here. We appreciate everybody being here. Does anybody else have any questions for Aubrey or any comments that you'd like to make?
Hey, it's Chipper. I just wanted to say hello to Ed and good to see you. Hadn't seen you since high school, I believe.
Yes, sir. I thought that was you when it said William Edwards, I only knew you as Chipper.
Well, I have so many names, I have to know who my audience is.
Good
Well, other places they call those aliases.
Mhm. You got to keep low.
Yeah.
Aubrey,
Chip
you
and
had
I
a,
were Chip and I were classmates at UT in the forestry program. We called him Chip, and he and I were on the famous Copperheads football team. I believe we beat the Jocks, didn't we, Chip?
Oh, yeah. Of course we did, Bill.
Aubrey, you had a tough time in Vietnam. As you look back on it, 50 years, any final thoughts on that?
Oh my, a lot of thoughts. Yeah, the thing that amazes me is how fast it goes. You know, it goes by so fast. And some little, maybe small length of time determines your whole life. I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing today if it hadn't been for that. I draw every day on some of the things, some of the people I patched up and everything. You know, I didn't learn it from a book. You know, I learned it being there, doing it. And combat medicine or first aid, any of that stuff is it's been very valuable to me. So it gave something back to me. I mean, I was lucky enough to survive. And like I said before, God had some sort of plan for me. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here today. And I have a family. I have a younger son. My youngest son, I have two boys. My youngest son is a family practice physician in Dandridge area. And grandchildren, I have 4 grandchildren, you know, and so, I mean, I wouldn't have any of that, you know, so I guess I'm very blessed, very lucky. And I really do thank you, Jim and Ed and Billy and all of you for even having this gathering, because I think it's very cathartic for me. It's very helpful. I'm a better person being able to handle these things, you know, because I know that there are lots of times when I'm just right on the edge. You know, it's just a fine line.
Right.
I've got a comment.
Yeah.
Jim. I think for those of us that survived Vietnam in relatively good shape, I can't speak to the ones that were severely wounded physically and mentally, but for those of us that survived, I think we survived that. I thought I can face anything in life back home. That's a cakewalk compared to what we had to go through. And
Oh yeah.
I'm not afraid to stand down any situation where we need to stand up. The other thing, my other comment is that, did we really get defeated in terms of what we were trying to do in Vietnam? Is Vietnam now in some way, even though they might be under a communist system, better off today than they would have been had we not been there? They have a pretty good economy, as best I can tell. I sometimes get a shirt and I look at the label and it says made in Vietnam. So I hope and think that we did some good.
Well, like I said, with the Green Berets and our missions, we went out and we tried to make those relationships so that they would come to us when they saw something, insurgencies happening and things that were going on. They would come to us and tell us about it. I don't think we lost. I think as long as we saved even a few of them, you know, from the perils of the Viet Cong and the North Army, I think we did some good. I think we have to think that. We have to feel that we did some good to it. Otherwise, it was all done in vain.
It was a
agree with you.
very complex war, and people have argued 1,000 different perspectives on it. I wrote a book apropos of winning and losing called The War Everyone Lost and Won. And I went through to make arguments. You can argue ways that we lost. You can argue ways that we won. I've spent my entire academic career on Vietnam because I think it was so badly misconstrued and misconstructed by the culture as a whole. It's been used as a symbol for all sorts of things that the war wasn't. So I've tried to set the record straight as much as I could. I've taught seminars on the war. It's been my whole academic life. So I'm grateful that you're doing this, but I think it was a very complex event. I think all of us had complex experiences, left probably feelings of very puzzlement over the thing and whether what we did. I mean, a lot of you did a lot of killing, and that's a huge responsibility that hangs on your shoulders, and you want to believe that it was for a good cause. I think it mostly was. And I think Bill has a very good point to say that somehow I think the Vietnamese are better off today for the war in ways that we're still trying to string together. But I think that's a good kind of concluding point that Bill made.
Well, I agree with you. I hope that that's true, and I believe that it is true. So we may not have won like the U.S. did over Germany, come marching through the streets of Berlin and Paris and all that. But I think they're a better country now that we were there. And so I hope and I don't think that the people that lost their lives, it was not in vain.
I believe that as well.
Another of our interviewees made the point that Vietnam was just a smaller part of a much larger thing that was going on in the whole Cold War. And it may have been a battle that we won or lost, but it was a battle. We tend to think of it as a war, but ultimately the American system, the capitalist system, the free market system won that war. And Vietnam helped us to do that. So I appreciate everybody's comments here tonight. I appreciate the time that you spent here. Particularly, I want to thank you, Aubrey, for sharing your experiences with us. That was just great. It was fascinating. I could listen to you for another couple of hours here, but I won't impose on you on that or any of these other nice folks. But thank you very much. Thank you for your service. Thank you for being here tonight and sharing your experiences with us.